how we can use modules. Working with modules, few important points I given. I uploaded a document also. The document contains all the contents related to module system. One example. As we learnt, everything same like JavaScript modules. Now, in modules, two important things you need to understand. One is every member in module is private in access. So to access any member outside module, you have to mark it as export. You have to mark it as export. Already in previous example, we saw that. That means in a module, whatever you define, suppose you have a function. So this function you want to access outside module, then you need to mark it as export. You may have a class, the class you want to mark it, use it outside. That means you have to use export class. You have an interface you need to access, then you have to define export interface. So whatever the name like this, the members must be marked as export. Now, there is one more important option. In a module, one member can be configured as default to export. In every module, one member can be configured as default to export. That means in a module, there can be so many members, and all members are defined as export. But one member can be defined as default export. Only one module can have only one member, which can be defined as default export. So default export means whenever the module is referred, automatically it is loaded into memory. So other exports are loaded into memory only when they are requested. But the default exports are automatically loaded into memory and they are ready for access. So already they are loaded into memory, but we have to import and use it. For example, what is difference is, you see, in our previous example, we have a library. In the contracts, we have a product contract and we marked it as export. So you can have multiple contracts in the same file. You can have a lot of members in the same file. For example, I can have export interface category contract. I can have a category contract. This category contract can have some category name, which is a string type. Now this product contract is a module. Contract as default. This contract is ready to it is used in your application. This need to be manually loaded into memory, and this is default loaded into memory. And every module can have only one default. That means you cannot have another default. So you cannot have another default. While importing, it will show problem. You can have only one default. Another point is, if any member is marked as default, then you cannot import it directly. You see, so I am going to templates. In template, here in importing problem will come. If any member is marked as default, then you have to import without any block. That means without any curly brace. You have to import like this. And if any default member is there, you have to mention it like this. And the members which are not default, comma, you have to define them in a block. That means category contract is not default. You have to mention it in this way. That means in a module, there can be default member and the members which are not marked as default. If any member is marked as default, then you have to directly import it without any block representation. And if anything is not defined as default, it should be inside the block. Category contract, you cannot write like this. You cannot use category contract like this because it is not marked as default. And there can be only one default in a module. So others need to be configured. So by using the curly brace like this. So that means it depends on how you configure. In a module, one member can be configured as default to export. It can be configured as default to export. That means syntactically like this. We can define export, default, and class. Or it can be like class name. It can be like export, default. It can be an interface. Anything you can mark it as default. But a module can contain only one default. And if any member is marked as default, so then you have to import without block. You have to import without block. So we have to import without block. So we don't need to define a block for importing. So generally we need to define like this. We have to say import and the class name and from. So this is the module. We can just define the module name. This is default member. If it is not default, then we have to define import in a curly brace, class name, and from module name. If it is a member which is not marked as default. If it is marked as default, then you have to configure in this way. If you want both, that means you have to define. So one is default member, comma, another one is some another class name. So from module, in a module, you can have both of them. You can mark them like this. So if anything is configured, then you have to define in this way. That is the point how we can configure. So when you are defining any module, in a module, there are two ways of specifying the members. One is default, another non-default. These are all not, this is not TypeScript, JavaScript modules, same actually. That means there is nothing new in TypeScript. JavaScript modules also the same concept. The same I am explaining here if you are not aware of that. So this is not new in TypeScript. Anywhere JavaScript modules are similar, same. Declare, So, and how we can use default, right? So that is export and default and the modules. Right? Now, another important example I already showed you. I already given you an example of module. Now, another important here, we need to understand about namespace. Namespace. So in TypeScript, what is namespace and how do we use it? Actually, technically, while building a library for project, lot of ambiguous issues will come. For example, I will show you here. Suppose we are working for a project, and in this project, we have two teams, some team A and this is team B. Now, these both teams are building a library for the project. They are building a library for the project. So, if they are building a library for the project, so team B created a class called class 1. And in that, so many members are there. Similarly, team B also created a class, and this also have class 1. Same name members may be there. Into both of them two different modules. Team A is building different module, team B is different module, but they may have same name members. For example, suppose you know JavaScript. Can you tell in JavaScript any two different objects having same members? In JavaScript, can you tell some same members used in different objects you came across? Any two objects using same members? In JavaScript, same members are in different objects. Any idea? Same members are in different objects. For example, you have a string object. You have a string object. You have an array object. So in string object, you have length. In array also you have length. In string object, you have index of. In array also you have index of. Last index of, index of. Here you have slice. Here also you have slice. Same, both are same name members, but the objects are different. I hope you know that. That means string object is having length, index of, slice, last index of. Array is also having same. That means if I am using length, is it belong to array or is it belong to string? I am using index of, is it array or is it string? This is the confusion. That means while building a large library for project, obviously these kind of issues will come because different modules and objects, but same name members may be there. To overcome these kind of issues, now the problem here, I hope you understood. So I need to use these two classes. In the project. Then what I am doing here is I am using so team A. I'm importing team A. I'm importing team A library. Import team A. And I am also importing team B. I'm also importing team B. and I am using class 1. I'm using class 1 in the project. Now the problem is it belonging to team B or is it team 1? But because both are having the same class, these kind of issues are very common, right? So same name can be there because of their nature of processing. That means suppose a bank have a modules. For example, you see, suppose a bank application, HDFC, a bank application. In that, so many modules are there, like personal, NRI, SME, wholesale, agri. These are all the modules it is having. Now, some personal means in personal banking, there are some module members, which may be there in NRI also. So some which may be there in wholesale also. In that case, importing them, using them will be always an issue. Now namespace can handle this. Namespace allows to cleanly classify and easily configure the members in such a way that it reduces these kind of ambiguous issues. So technically, namespace is good in building such large libraries. That means actually namespace is nothing but namespace is a collection of classes, a collection of subname spaces, and members. So members in namespace can be an contract, can be a template, can be a component, so can be a function. Anything can be there inside namespace. Same like module. Only the point is we organize everything into a namespace. We keep everything into a namespace. So how we configure the namespace? Let's see. Means how we can define the namespace and use them. Let's see. So same example, what we learned previously, we will try to implement that by using namespace. Okay, let's see. I will create another here. So shopping project, something like shopping project. In this shopping project means I don't want to disturb others, because one important thing you should know, we discussed about module system. In module system, you should know that generally when you are, suppose I have a folder. In this folder, I created one file, index.ts. In this, I declared some variable, some name is equal to some string type and is equal to some John, something like this. I have created another file, demo.ts, and I am creating here var name, it is a string type, and here we have TV. Now this will show problem in Visual Studio. It will say that this name is already taken, but that is taken in some other file. But what TypeScript will do is, if you maintain everything in one folder, then it considers this folder as one namespace. It will consider this as one namespace. In that namespace, these two files it considers as belonging to the same library. If two files belong to the same library, if you are using same name members in two different files also, it will show error. It will show error. That is the reason. So when you are working with libraries like this, I showed everything in one file only every day. Why? Because if you don't know namespaces, if you don't know module systems, if you create several files for every program, one file, just like you do in your Java, .NET, C++, for every program you create one file. For every program you create different files, and compile and run doesn't matter in C or C++ or Java or .NET, but in TypeScript it matters. Why it matters? Because even you maintain everything in separate files, it will consider as one namespace. In that namespace, all are considered as under one module system. Due to that same name references you use in different files also, it will show problem until or unless you create in separate folder. That means every file you have to maintain in separate folder, then it will recognize as separate namespace. Right? That is the reason all these days I showed you everything in one file. I was replacing my code in index.ts only. Why? Because if you don't know modules and namespace system, then problem will come. So now you know the namespace system, you can use this and you can design. You can avoid that issue by writing everything in a separate namespace. So what I will do now here, in this, I am creating a shopping project. In this shopping project, let's create a new folder. In the shopping project, I am creating a folder library. This is the library for shopping project, right? And we will create another folder that is app. So app is, shopping project related, all app will be here and library will be here. In this library, I am adding a folder. This is contracts. Okay, in this library, I am adding a folder templates, and in the library, another folder that is components. We are designing like this. Now, by using module system you designed previously, now we will use namespace. So let's go to contract, add a new contract. Same product contract. We are using product contract dot ts. In this product contract dot ts, now this time how to use namespace, and so how do we configure? How do we use namespace? To use the namespace, you have to just define namespace keyword, namespace. Main namespace name. I will give the namespace as shopping project. Okay. This is the project namespace. In this project namespace, for every module, we will maintain again namespaces. A namespace is a collection of subnamespaces. It can have subnamespaces. So I will create another namespace. And here I will say contracts. That means all the contracts are kept in this namespace. And as per the rules, this namespace is not accessible outside. If this namespace is not accessible outside, we have to mark it as export. Export the namespace. Now inside this namespace, you can create an interface. We are creating a contract interface. What is it? Product contract. In this product contract, now we can define the members. But this contract must be accessible outside this namespace. Then we have to mark it as export. Export. Now what is advantage of creating these namespaces? You see, in this example, as I showed you previously, we have a team A team A. In this we have class 1. And here we are having team B. Team B. Team B. In this we are using class 1. Team B class 1. Right? We are using this class 1. Team B, team A class 1. Now I want to access in project. Now we are maintaining a namespace for that. Now what I can do is, if I want to access class 1, then I can simply access like this. That means we can import directly team A, and in that class 1. That will be easy. Now you don't have any problem. So similarly, we can import team B. In that we can import class 1. Now you don't have any issue because this namespace is used as a reference for class 1. The class names may be same, but they belong to different namespace. Now it is easy to implement. Now you can reduce that ambiguous issues. Previously what happening, you are importing class 1 like this. Now you have a problem. Is it team A class 1, team B class 1? Because you are importing the library and using the class. Now you have a better usage. For this, you have the namespaces to configure. Now rest of concept, everything is same. See, when I am giving the folder names, here, so the folder icons are changing. This already I told you in the beginning. For that, we have to install a plugin called VS Code Icons. If you install VS Code Icons, your file names will be changing according to the extension you are giving, name you are giving. So I already told you 2 extensions to download. One is live server extension, another one VS Code Icons. If you download that, you will get these symbols. Otherwise, all folders will look similar. So here the library is ready, namespace is ready. In this, members are same. We have name string type, we have price number type, we have quantity number type, and we have total is a method which is number type, and print is a method which is void type. Now when you are using namespace, importing and using this namespace is important. So contract is ready. So see the hierarchy in the contract. First we created a project namespace. In that project namespace, we are creating contracts. In that contracts, we are maintaining it. What is advantage? You can even import this in another project and you can use it. That means the library of one project is accessible in another project. So here I am going to template now. We will create a template. Add a new file. What is it? Product template.ts. In product template.ts, now here I am defining same namespace. The main namespace is shopping project. Shopping project is the main namespace. In this, we have another namespace. This is templates. All templates we will put in templates. Okay. Now here I will mark it as export. In this templates, now we will create. So export abstract class. Class name is what? Product template. Product template is the class. This should implement the contract. This must implement the contract. But this time it is not directly modules. It is defined in namespace. Now how do we get any library of namespace? Actually, so we have to define syntactically like this: namespace and name, and inside that namespace we have to define the members like export class name, or we have export interface and interface name. Like this we need to define. Now how to import this and use in any another application? To import namespace, you need triple slash directive. You need a triple slash directive. We need a triple slash directive. Actually, in many interviews of TypeScript, they may ask you, what is a triple slash directive? Triple slash directive is used for importing namespaces. Triple slash directive is importing namespace. It imports like this: triple slash, and it will use reference, and the reference path is equal to whatever your namespace name, whatever the namespace is there, that you have to import. Actually, it is module name. Module name means the file name that contains the namespace. The module file name you have to define. Now, whatever the members are defined inside this, we can access and we can use. This is the reference how to handle. Actually, in modules directly we use import, but in namespaces you cannot use directly import. First you have to use reference. That means now in this templates, I want to access the contracts. Then what we have to do at the top, first we need a triple slash directive. And here we have to use reference. Reference path is equal to, we have to configure the path. Reference path is equal to, here it is present outside the current folder, then // in that we have a separate folder called contracts. In that contracts we have a file called product contract.ts. We have to import that. First we have to import the file that contains the namespace system. We have to import the file that contains namespace system. Now in this file we have a namespace. You see, in that we have a contract. What is that? Product contract. But it is present in lengthy hierarchy. So what is its parent? Contracts. What is its parent? Shopping. Means how to access it actually. See, this product template should implement that contract. So what you have to do is implements. You cannot access product contract directly. Because it is present in a namespace lengthy hierarchy. We have shopping project. In shopping project, we have contracts. In contracts, product contract. That's how we have to implement. That means we need to define the main namespace. In that we have to define sub namespace. In that we have to mention the member. Which member to import. Actually, this is a lengthy hierarchy. That means using this is a lengthy process every time. That means writing all this is a lengthy process every time. So you can do one thing. Instead of doing this, what you have to do is you have to import the library like this. That means after importing the namespace, you have to configure the member using complete hierarchy of namespace. Complete hierarchy of namespace you have to configure. That means you have to write like this: namespace name, sub namespace name, namespace name, and we have to define the member. This is lengthy process. You can do one thing. So you can alias namespace. You can alias namespace. In interviews, many times they may ask you what is aliasing of namespace. What is aliasing of namespace? These technical terms are very common. What is / directive? What is aliasing of namespace? Aliasing is a technique where you can access the complete hierarchy of namespace in a shorthand way. You can create a shorthand technique. That means you can alias means you can create a shorthand. That means instead of referring, actually what we have to do, we have to write project dot team A. So, or in that we have another module A like this. In that we have the member. Like this we have to access. Instead of doing that, for all this library, whatever the library is there, we can just put import some name is equal to. That means this is called aliasing. Aliasing means you can get this complete hierarchy of namespaces and store under one name. Under one name. So that you can access directly by this name its members. That means whatever the members are there inside that namespace, you can access by using this name. This is called alias. For example, see now, to access the product contract, I always need shopping project and contracts. I will do one thing simply. So if I write like this, it is not available. So what we will do, after importing this file, we are using import. Import, I just give as contract. Contract is equal to, I will import shopping namespace. We have shopping project. In shopping project, we have contracts. This we will implement. Now important, remember, aliasing is only for namespace, not for member. That means the member name we don't give here. That means number is product contract. We don't give that here. Aliasing is only for namespace. Up to namespaces hierarchy, you can give alias. Now all these can be accessed by using contract. That means now you can simply put here contract dot product contract. This is the easy way. That means even you have a 20-30 levels of hierarchy, then you can access with a simple shortcut name. That is called aliasing. Now you can just access by using the product, this contract and product contract. And now you know that if it is contract, you have to implement. So what we will do, public, we will implement name. It is a string type and it is empty. Similarly, another one is price. It is a number type. It is 0. Another one is quantity. It is number type. That is also 0. Another one is we will define as public, abstract, and we will print total. Total is what type? Number, and we will leave it for implementation. Similarly, we have public, abstract, and we have print. Print is an void type member. We are configuring for void. Now this is the abstract class in a product template. This is the hierarchy. Now I want to use this template, product template, and implement the functionality of total and print. Then what we do, let's go. So here we are defining in the components. Let's go to the components and create a new file. And this is product component .ts. In this product component, we have to import the template. How do we import the template? By using / directive, we have to use reference path / it is in templates. So we have product template.ts. We have to import that. After importing, now you can create an import. I will give template is equal to shopping project dot templates. We can import this. Now what we have to do, we need to create a component. Observe, make sure that everything you marked as export, otherwise you cannot access outside. Right here in the product component, now again we are creating a namespace. So namespace is what? Shopping project. In that namespace, we will create another namespace, and this is components. In this components namespace, we are creating export class, that is product component. This product component extends, what is it? Product template, which is present in template dot product template. And according to that, we have to implement the functionality. That means we have name is equal to some name, and we have price is equal to some price. We have quantity is equal to quantity, and total is a method which should return this dot quantity into this dot price. And we need print another one method. This print method have to return console.log. It should print all the details. That means name, this dot name, and price. So this is this dot price, and in the next we have quantity, that is this dot quantity, and we have total, so that is this dot total. All these we need to configure. That's how we need to define. So this is the basic process of how we can define a component. Now the library is ready. You have to create an app, and this namespace also should need export. Otherwise you cannot access the components. Now how to use this in our app? Let's go to app folder now. In that we will create a new file, index.ts. Here we have to use that product component. So first we have to import by using / directive. We have reference path is equal to, so /, we have to go to library. In that library we have components. In the components we have the product component.ts. That's how we have to import. This is our app. In app we have to import the product component from library, and we have to import the namespace. Import, suppose I am giving component is equal to shopping project. In the shopping project we have components, so we have to import that. Now what we can do, let object TV is an object. It is of what type? Class. You can access the class by using component.product component class. And through that TV, we can access the print method that is ready. That is how we import and use the library. But this is at very high level. In daily Angular usage, you will not use namespaces much. You will use only module system. Namespace is used in the background of Angular to build your library of Angular. That means the Angular library is built with namespace, and that library is given to you. You use module systems and import that and use it. So you will not much come across with namespaces while working with Angular. So always 100 to 100% your work will be in module based environment. Namespace is for the people who build library for application, Majority your role will be using the library. Your role will be using the library built by some experts, right? If you are given a chance to build the library for application, then you have to do by using namespace. So while learning Angular, you will not use much namespace. Means you will not write libraries and all with the namespace. You will just use libraries. And those all libraries are built by using namespaces. So you don't need to much worry about namespace. You need to just know about the technical process. How namespace is created, how namespace is imported, how namespace is aliased, how the members of namespace are accessed. These are enough. So because in Angular, we will use the module systems very much, right? But behind that module system, this namespace system will be working, right? So now one more point is there. Now, how do I compile this? To compile and run this, previously module systems, it can compile directly, but here it cannot. If you compile this file, in module system, it is internally using dependency mechanism. Due to that dependency mechanism, what it is doing, identifying all the dependencies and loading them, identifying all the dependencies and compiling them. But here it cannot do. If I compile this file, it cannot use dependencies. There is no dependency mechanism working by default. So what it will do is, it will translate only these lines into JavaScript. It will translate only these lines into JavaScript, but it should actually translate the JavaScript for the component you imported. And that component should translate for template. That template should translate for contract, which is automatically happening in module, but it will not happen in namespace. You can try and see. For example, let's try this. Run this Explorer, run this file. I'm compiling this tsc index.ts. It is presenting in this shopping project index.ts. Actually, for module system, this was enough, but I created this. JavaScript file will be generated. So I will run that node index.js. Now you will have a problem. It says that I am unable to find this shopping project. It is unable to find that shopping project. Shopping project is not defined. Actually, shopping project is a member of this. From there, it should bring it. Actually, that is accessing from templates. Template is accessing from contract. It is unable to handle because only these lines are translated. This is not translated. You see, let's go to index.js. In index.js, that path is imported as it is. Only this JavaScript code is converted. The path is imported as it is. If path is imported as it is, then it is not extracted. If it is not extracted, all that code is not imported here. So that makes problem. That is the reason if you are dealing with namespace, you have to compile in this way. What we have to do is tsc, and you have to use a flag out file. You have to use the flag called out file, TSC out file. TSC out file, and you have to define the JavaScript file. JavaScript file is index.js, and from where the JavaScript should come, index.ts. Now what this out file will do is, it will use dependency injection explicitly. Out file will track the dependencies now. In module system, you don't need to do that. It will track the dependencies. But in namespace, it cannot track the dependencies. To track the dependencies, you have to use out file. In experience level interviews, we have seen people asking this question also, why to use out file for compiling namespace? Because module system internally uses a dependency injection mechanism that tracks all the dependencies required for module. But namespace don't have an internal dependency mechanism. We have to explicitly use an internal dependency mechanism, that is out file. This out file flag uses dependency injection. It identifies what are the references given in TS file. Those reference files are also extracted and it is kept. Not only one file it will extract all dependencies. That means template have dependency of contract have dependencies, everything will bring. Now hit enter and see. Now it is translating everything. Okay, now let's run node index.js. Now it is ready. Previously it was not ready because of the namespace dependency mechanism. Now it is ready. You can see JS file now. You see the index.js file now. Now you see entire code is extracted here. That means the code from all files is extracted here. And it is kept in a format which is understandable to JavaScript. You see the code from, this is the code from contracts. And this is the code from templates, right? And this is the code from the components. It will extract everything into one file, which it was unable to do. Directly it is unable to use the dependency injection. We have to use the TSC, right? So when you are using namespace alias, here, let me give here. Aliasing is done by using import reference name is equal to namespace and sub namespace. This is aliasing. And to compile the library with namespace, you need explicit dependency injection to implement. You need explicit dependency injection to implement. For that, what you have to do is TSC out file, and here we have to define the name. So that is index.js. The file is index.ts. That's how we need to define. Then you know you have to compile index.js, right? This is very important when you are dealing with the dependencies, how you configure and work with the dependency. That entire example I will upload into Classroom, right? So what we have done in this, the process is this. So I will show you the process here one more time, just roughly observe here. So what we created here, first we created a library in that contract. In the contract, we have a product contract. And the product contract is defined with a namespace, shopping project. In that we have sub namespace. And in that we have a contract. And the sub namespaces and contracts are defined as export. And remember, you can have multiple. For example, I have another contract. I'm having another contract. I will give a new file. This contract is category contract .ts. Now here I have to define the same. What is it? Namespace. So that is shopping project. In the shopping project, we have namespace. In that we have contracts. In the contracts, so this is export. So this is export. And in this we have, so another interface, export interface. This is category contract. In the category contract, I will give as category name. Category name is what type? String type. Category name is string type. Now, once you configure that, so in this, now we are trying to access this and use in our template. So what we do, go to the templates. In template, we have to import that file also. That means we have to use reference path. Reference path is equal to, in the reference path, I need to define contract slash category contract .ts. Now I can access that and implement here. You can see I can just use aliasing now. I am just using contract .category contract also I can implement. A class can implement multiple contracts, right? It will support multiple inheritance. Now what we have to do here, we need to define public. So category name, it is a string type and it is empty. To configure this in our components. In components, in the product component, here I am just using the category name. Category name is a category name. So just I defined as electronics, like this, the category name. And I want to print the category also here. /n category is equal to here this dot category name. Now you don't need to do anything extra because just we have to implement the contract. Now we need to compile and run this. Component is ready. Print will print all details. That means we have to transcompile again. tsc out file. Capitalization matters. You have to write in the same way. Actually, in older versions of TypeScript, we used to write out file like this. In some websites, when you are going online tutorials and all, some websites, they may show you like this, out-file. Though that is gone. That is old version. From the new versions, the command changed. The command, instead of hyphen, we have to use camel case. In Angular also, so commands way of use is little bit changed in latest version. Old versions, when you are, because online when you are watching some examples, tutorials, first you should know in which version they given that example. Otherwise, our latest versions will mismatch with the old version tutorials. You can't correctly handle. So many times you will see like this, but now it is changed. You have to write it as out file, and it is index.js, index.ts. Now it is done successfully. It is compiled. Now it is node index.js that will display the details and show. That's how generally we can configure and define the options. This is basic example of how to implement and work with the namespace. This entire example I will give you in the notes. You can go through that, right? So in real world Angular designing development, You will not come across with namespace design every day. You will come across with modules every day. So anyhow, you should know the difference, why to use namespace and how it is used. But in real world scenario, you will come across with this in rare occasions. That means we don't create namespaces and all, we directly maintain. But you will able to create and work with this, especially if you are given the job of building a library for app, right? Actually, you are the developers who are going to use the library which is already built. You will not build the library until or unless you are very extreme expert in technology, and your role is architecture. Means your role is architect. You are architect. Then in the architect role, we build libraries. In such cases, you will come across with that, right? Architect role means those people should know design patterns and all. I hope you heard design patterns. 23 design patterns are there. Gang of 4 design patterns, we call them as. So this is for the people who are dealing with such libraries, right? So you have to know two important things: what is namespace and what is module, right? This is enough to understand all the TypeScript required for our Angular, right? Now we can start working with Angular. So what is Angular, how Angular works and all. Whatever language you learned here, this you have to use in Angular now. And this TypeScript knowledge is enough for even React or Vue. Anywhere you are using TypeScript, this is enough, right? And while learning Angular, some more new things you will learn in TypeScript. So in TypeScript, some new things which are there you will learn while working. So now we can start understanding and working with Angular now. That means now we can go and start with Angular, right? So before Angular, this all important, because remember at interview level also, majority of the questions will be on TypeScript, because Angular is a framework and nobody can ask much on framework. School level people also can answer those questions. Framework level questions everybody can answer. They are very easy to handle. But logical programming and technical terms are very complicated. That is the reason Angular interviews you can easily handle if you are very good with your TypeScript, right? So now in Angular, what is Angular, how it works, how to set up, that we will start in the next session, right? Tomorrow we will do that. From tomorrow onwards, we can start working with Angular. Okay. All these TypeScript related notes I will upload, and one document I will upload. In that document, all the PDF will be there, TypeScript related. Okay. Then tomorrow onwards, we can start working with Angular now. Huh?